Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. Today I want to talk about yesterday's Amstel Gold outcome with Tadej POGAČAR winning the race. Now I covered it a little bit on yesterday throughout the butterfly effect about how you just cannot work with Tadej POGAČAR at any moment in time throughout a race if you want to beat the Slovenian. He's the number one ranked rider in the world, and he's head and shoulders above everybody on the planet with the exception of Primož Roglič, Jonas Vingegaard, and of course Remco Evenepoel. Those guys could give him a little bit of a headache for sure, and certainly Primož Roglič I put on the same page, just a notch below Tadej POGAČAR, with how good the Slovenian can battle against the other Slovenian. Those two riders are on a whole nother dimension. Jonas Vingegaard, solid of course, and on his right day with Tadej POGAČAR a little bit off, then all of a sudden Jonas Vingegaard stands a chance of beating the Slovenian for sure, and absolutely if there's some tactical mistakes. When I look at some of the comments yesterday, and one in particular from Randy, he starts talking about, or asking, I should say, if this tactic yesterday at Amstel Gold with 90 kilometers to go when Tadej POGAČAR is going in that front move is kind of the same way that he lost stage 11 of the Tour de France last year to Jumbo-Visma's Jonas Vingegaard and Primož Roglič when they were attacking him. I said in the comments, it mirrors some of the same tactics, but not exactly. When I'm talking about mirroring, of course, he's up there, he's isolated, but the difference was in yesterday's Amstel Gold race, in that group of 16, he's not pushing it in that group of 16. He's following the move, he puts himself in there, he's rotating through and rotating off, but the difference between that Tour de France last year, stage 11, and here at Amstel Gold, Randy, really is that the group of 15 riders with Tadej POGAČAR are all rotating through with him perfectly, with the exception, of course, of Jumbo-Visma's Tosh van der Sande, who's sitting on. And then later in the race, Gianni Vermeersch, the Alpecin de Koenig rider, was doing a solid tactical job of not coming through at all and just sitting on the back. The other riders, all of them up in this front group, I can understand working for a short bit of time if that gap could extend out to the peloton immediately and say you got 2 minutes. Now all of a sudden you could start tacking with numbers. When you look at FDJ had numbers in that group, and so did a lot of other teams. Jaco Alula had 2 riders, and so there's a bunch of options that can happen if that group should extend away from the peloton right away. But in general, once it doesn't extend and you're working even with Tadej POGAČAR, you're in trouble. And that's really the big differences between last year at the Tour de France when he's battling against 2 Jumbo-Visma guys, Jonas Vingegaard and Primož Roglič. They're attacking him left and right, and then he's throwing in attacks. Instead of at that point in time, he could just back off the throttle, kill that move, come back to where he has 3 strong teammates back there. Soler, the Solerism was back there, who started all that chaos on stage 11. And then, of course, he has Rafael Majka, and he has a really good on-form American, Brandon McNulty, who was back there that could have controlled everything. Now, when you fast forward up here to Amstel Gold, if he doesn't work, probably what happens is that the group starts attacking left and right, and then, of course, maybe he goes back to that group, and then his team's got to get on the front, and all those guys look tired. So Tadej POGAČAR's move of following that group of 15 was intelligent. I don't like him out there if that gap extends, because then you're going to start getting attacked all over the place. So there's not really one fantastic strategy that you can employ on yesterday's Amstel Gold race, with the exception, if you want to simplify everything, you just never work with Tadej POGAČAR at all. We saw in the interview with about 70 kilometers ago when Tom Pidcock said, hey, you just can't build your team strategy around one rider. And I said yesterday, absolutely, you need to 100% build your strategy if you plan on winning Amstel Gold around Tadej POGAČAR, because he's that good. And I have one question for Tom Pidcock, and he'll have to answer it himself because I can't tell you. But when you're going pull for pull with Tadej POGAČAR, and your number one plan wasn't evolved around Tadej POGAČAR, was your number one plan, team strategy there, was to go in and pull even with Tadej POGAČAR all the way to 250 kilometers, 253 kilometers to go for the sprint? What was the exact plan there for Team Ineos if you weren't planning on trying to find some way to isolate Tadej POGAČAR and then attack him? It was really to go one-on-one. Team Ineos' strategy, number one strategy yesterday, go one-on-one with Tadej POGAČAR. That seems like a nightmare. Now, there's one other comment that was posted up yesterday that I want to talk about for sure, and it was Paul Solon that said, what are these guys doing working one-on-one with Tadej POGAČAR? Don't they remember the days when we're going back to Peter Sagan, when we're in the classics, and nobody would work with Peter Sagan, right? That's what was happening back there in 2017 at Ghent-Wevelgem when it was Greg Van Avermaet that won Ghent-Wevelgem. Nobody in that group would work with Peter Sagan because he was as dominant in the classics, the flatter cobble classics, as we're seeing Tadej POGAČAR is in just about every race he enters. So when we're looking here at the commenters and they're saying, Tadej POGAČAR, why are you guys working with him? That's the same thing I'm trying to say up here is there's never a point in time when you want to work with Tadej POGAČAR if the objective is to win. Now you look at EF Education's Ben Healy. This is a perfect example of a rider that clearly understands how to race his bike. He wants a top result, so he's up there working with Tadej POGAČAR, but every time he gets a chance to do less than Tadej POGAČAR and the Ineos riders up there of Sheffield and Tom Pidcock, he's backing off and doing the minimum throughout the time when they were 16 riders, then when they were 11, and of course later when they were 3, he wasn't working at all. Except for after Tadej POGAČAR had attacked, he worked there with Tom Pidcock and then he dislodged the Ineos rider with 13 kilometers to go. This was good racing and intelligent racing for a young kid that wants a solid result there at Amstel Gold where they know, okay, we can't win. But when you look at a team like Ineos where they have 2 riders in that front group, Max Sheffield and Tom Pidcock, they have the ability at that point in time to actually kill this break. We saw where we had Jumbo-Visma, Tosh van der Sande sitting on it, had no effect on this group of 16. We saw later when it was a group 11 where you had the Albacete de Koenig rider Gianni Vermeersch sitting on. It had no effect because nobody's worried about the power of those 2 riders of somehow coming up and dropping everyone near the finish. But if you had Ineos back off the front there and not work, that would have killed that break, brought it back. Now, let's take a couple different scenarios because it's total chaos. And unless you want to go with the number 1 best plan of not working with Tadej POGAČAR ever, which will seal it and make it very difficult for the Slovenian to be able to win Amstel Gold, because unless he has a dominant team, that means UAE team members have to control all the way from the beginning of the race to the very end of the race where you can launch Tadej POGAČAR. Did he have that strong of a team? I kind of doubt if his team was strong enough to control it throughout that whole race, so they would need some help from somewhere. And as we have witnessed in the last 3 years, there's always a bunch of knuckleheads out there that will work with Tadej POGAČAR, and we saw that in a group of 16 where basically there's 10, 11, 12 guys back there that are willing to not only work with Tadej POGAČAR, but throw in massive efforts like we saw from Alexei Lusenko, the Astana rider, who I saw doing big pulls no matter what size that group was with Tadej POGAČAR. That was ridiculous moves. So when we look at it and we say, okay, we're going to bypass the number 1 rule of not working with Tadej POGAČAR, we're going to let this group of 16 go up the road. At what point in time would they want to start attacking Tadej POGAČAR, or at what point in time do they hit the abort button and then they go back to the group and there's some chaos that can ensue because Tadej POGAČAR doesn't really have teammates back there when we're talking about late into the race with about 40, 35 kilometers to go, when we saw that group of 6-8 riders back there coming with Baggioli and with Thies Benoot. At that moment, if you're Tom Pidcock, the best strategy at that moment, don't even work with Tadej POGAČAR at all. Back off. Ben Healy already, the EF Education rider, has stopped working with that front group of 3. If they back off, and let's say the 2 riders from behind, Alexei Lusenko and Andreas Kohn from Lotto, they come back. Now you have 5 guys up there and you cannot work still. This will slow the pace down and allow the guys from the back there who are chasing and the guys who already got dropped out of that group of 11 that were back there that got caught. So now there's 10 guys chasing. You have 10 guys come back up to the front. And we're talking about with 35 kilometers to go, now all of a sudden you have a solid group of around 15 riders. That's 14 guys that Tadej POGAČAR has to chase and follow. So you back the gas off, the group from the back comes, the size of the break swells, which is exactly what a Tom Pidcock would want. You want chaos. The last thing you want with Tadej POGAČAR, again, is to be working even with the Slovenian or to keep chaos from not entering the group. You want chaos with Tadej Pogačar, just like we saw on stage 11. So there, when Paul is talking about, is it kind of the same? Well, could be the same if Tom Pidcock backs off. Ben Healy, of course, continues not to pull. The two guys from the back come on. That's Alexei Lusenko, Andreas Kron, and then all of a sudden that group of 10 come on. Now we have chaos, which is why stage 11 was so effective at last year's Tour de France against one Tadej Pogačar. He was isolated going over the Col de Galibier. They're going down the descent. There's 15, 20 riders there with that group, and they're all attacking him left and right. And there's so much chaos that he doesn't have the ability to go back to the car and get help. He has no teammates there until the very end before they start the Col de Granon, when we saw Rafael Majka come back to that front group. And then you see the chaos stop as Rafael Majka is able to come back up to Tadej Pogačar and feed him at stage 11 of last year's Tour de France. So here, yesterday at Amstel Gold, the number one rule first, don't work with Tadej Pogačar. That's your team plan of the day. If your team Ineos, your number one plan is to wrap it around Tadej Pogačar. And the second rule you would want in your team meeting would be, of course, you want chaos. You want them isolated and you want a lot of guys attacking, and then you have to gamble. Are you willing to lose the race to make sure Tadej Pogačar can't win? And then you hope that a group goes up the road with chaos. You make Tadej Pogačar pull. Maybe even you have to rotate through 20% of what Tadej Pogačar is doing, and then once he gets you close, hopefully Tadej Pogačar, the Slovenian, who's never tired, but hopefully he becomes tired, and you jump away and try to bridge up to that group, and then you have a legitimate shot of winning Amstel Gold. Now, one thing about Tom Pidcock I will give when we're talking about the British rider, I did remember him winning against Wout van Aert back at the Classic, the Bronze Appeal last year or the year before. And when we're talking about Tom Pidcock, it's very difficult to know what kind of fitness he has because he's up and down all over the place, right? When he won this year at Strade Bianche, he held off a group of chasers. And then there at Trino Adriatico, he had some crashes that cost him some form. So coming into these classics, Tom Pidcock would have to say whether or not if his legs are good or not good coming into a 250K plus Amstel Gold race to know. But going one-on-one with Tadej Pogačar, again, has to be your biggest rule when you're into team strategy. Ineos planning how to win Amstel Gold. Isolate him, make his team work, make them blow up, have as much chaos as you can possibly have, like on stage 11 of the Tour de France. Otherwise, it's going to be just like the commenter, Shookem Dog, said, man, all you did was just work with Tadej Pogačar and you raced for third, Team Ineos. Congratulations, you did a great job on yesterday's Amstel Gold race. Hope you guys liked today's take of Beyond the Coverage, and hopefully my tactics were clear enough for everybody to understand. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition real soon.